leadership framework, which will help you lead with clarity, take ownership of change, build resilience through pressure, and execute with impact. So, as you're looking at this case study, let's take Cobalt Metals, a company backed by Bill Gates. They are using AI to hunt for critical minerals in Zambia. At first, their models misread terrain data. Lincolns were throwing off predictions. What I find fascinating about this case study as I was doing research is that what made the difference to solve this problem wasn't just the tech. It was leadership's commitment to clarity. They brought in data scientists, geologists, local drill teams into one decision-making unit. The AI was in the black box. It was a shared tool. And they refined data within days to avoid a $3 million drill error. That's clarity. Getting the right people together around the table, making complexity understandable, and driving data into direction. When leaders are unclear, confusion cascades downwards. Teams become reactive, safety suffers, and performance stalls. I want to say to you, clarity is courage in the face of uncertainty. It's standing still in the middle of competing demands, productivity, sustainability, and digitization, and declaring that this is the hill we are climbing now, this is what matters. As leaders, we ought to simplify the complex and communicate the mission in such a way that every crew member, from the control room to the coal face, understands how they contribute. Ask yourselves, what does success look like on this digital journey? And does my team know it? So what can we learn from this young man in the story? So this young man took ownership of his purpose and dream. Digital transformation is not an IT project. It is a culture shift. Ownership is required at every level, starting with leadership. I mean, let's be honest. When things go wrong, systems go off, adoption is slow, the rollout misses the mark, what's our first instinct? To blame the tech, the vendor, the resistance? But I put it to you, ownership means what part of the outcome do I own? Ownership is not about micromanagement. It's leadership stepping up and saying, we are not going to wait for change. We are driving it. Let's have a look at another case study. Tech resources in 2023, they were under pressure, a hostile takeover from Glencore loomed. The easier path would have been to surrender, but CEO Jonathan Price didn't flinch. He took strategic control, sold off Tech's coal business for $9 billion and doubled down on copper, the lifeblood of the clean future, clean energy future. As we look at this case study, CEO Jonathan Price didn't do it alone. He aligned the C-suite, empowered managers to communicate openly with staff, making ownership everyone's job. As leaders, we have to have what I call decisive ownership models, even when waters are rough. I want to encourage you, those who are leading teams, to say, I want you to have what you call weekly failure reviews. Weekly failure reviews must be held not to punish, but to assess on what's going on within the organization. To ask ourselves questions, what did we learn and how can we do it better? This small act ignites a culture of accountability. Ownership is not about control. It's about commitment. The ability to say, whether this works or fails, I'm in, I'm learning, I'm evolving. And when we lead with empathy, teams that are for us become loyal. I want us to talk about resilience, part of the framework. This young man was so resilient that he asked for a second opportunity. How many of us, when things go wrong, we quit because we don't have resilience? So when I describe resilience, I say resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity. Mining is no stranger to pressure. Commodity prices fluctuate, regulatory landscape shifts, communities are now demanding more responsibility, and now digital disruption adds another layer of stress. Resilience is not about endurance. It's about adaptation, the ability to stand grounded in purpose even when the terrain changes. I want us to look at resilience because transformation tests us more than any stable season ever could. When the seasons are stable, we are not tested. But the true testing comes through transformation, which is why I love this conference so much, because it talks about transformation. And it alludes my message when I started to say we have to move from information to transformation. Here's another case study. Fortescue Metals under Andrew Forrest has committed $6 billion to fully decarbonize operations by 2030. That's not a nice to have. That's ripping out diesel trucks, building green hydrogen plants, and rewriting how an entire mining business operates. Another fascinating thing or aspect as I was going through this case study researching is that this organization faced criticism. Investors hesitated, but Fortescue didn't buckle. They communicated with employees, not just the markets. They celebrated small wins, like a single truck going electric. They trained, supported, and protected teams facing adversity. ownership, or resilience rather, does not talk about brute force, or it's not only about brute force. It's about sustained belief and caring for your people and the ability to adapt over and over again. Change isn't just technical, it's human. Change is human. And as leaders, we have to embrace vulnerability to say, this is hard, but we are going to get through it together. When we lead with empathy, we're not only building teams that are resilient, but loyal ones. So, resilience is also about energy. Are we fueling our teams or draining them with uncertainty? Remember, strong teams aren't born. They are built in pressure. So the young man, when he had a conversation with a farmer, what I've learned about that young man's story, he executed his purpose, his dream. South Africa, as compared to the global, sphere, other countries, we have one of the best policies in the world, but we don't execute. Execution is a problem. All clarity, ownership, resilience mean nothing in the world without execution. I mean all. And execution in the digital era or age must be agile. Gone are the days where 5-year plans are locked in stone. Today's success belongs to leaders who test, pivot, and deliver value fast. Execution also means discipline. The mining industry today has never had more access to technology than it has. However, access without execution means nothing. Here's another case study. Between 2021 and 2023, South African mining companies began embedding 4IR tech, predictive analytics, Internet of Things sensors, ESG reporting tools, and their operations. So what made the difference with most companies during this era was not about who had the best software. Winners in this age were those who moved from pilot to real deployment. They applied agile principles, short sprints, cross-functional feedback, and KPIs that actually mattered. It was not about perfection. Companies who thrived when life, they tested, they learned, and they got better. Execution in the digital age does not mean controlling every variable. It's about building systems that can adapt fast and produce results under pressure. Execution requires two things. Number one, focus. Choose your battles. You don't have to fight every battle. Follow through. Show your team you finish what you start. When I train people conducting workshops,